354 pages of strategy on how America can bring Russia to its knees. In a nutshell, that's what the 2019 report from the RAND Corporation is. It weighs up the pros, the cons, the costs, the risks, and it decides what's the fastest way to push Russia to the brink. I'm sure it's not the only one out there, but this one stands out for eerily predicting exactly what we've seen unravel over the last few months. The report presents three main lines of attack: money, mines, and the military. Starting with money, so the economy. The advice: hit Russia where it hurts. Oil and gas. Specifically, expand US energy production, check. Impose financial sanctions, check. Get Europe to import gas from other suppliers. Well, the jury's still out on that one.
Immediately, I don't think we can help, and nobody can replace. I've said this very clearly. The volume that we're talking about, 30 to 40% of gas coming from Russia to Europe, is not something that can be replaced overnight. It needs time.
And although the report recognizes that economic suffocation of Russia would bring about high cost, boy, is that true, ultimately it decided it would all be worth it in the end. Why?
Ultimately, although costly, Europe could adjust to a complete cutoff of Russian gas in the medium to long terms. It would also benefit the United States and, on those grounds alone, should be pursued.
Moving on to mines, also known as ideology and information. Here, the report suggests playing on the Kremlin's apparent paranoia about regime change. Though after Biden's most recent example of highbrow diplomacy, arguably it's not so much paranoia as proof.
For God's sake, this man cannot remain.
And while the president later walked back his comments, the report presents a range of possibilities, from sparking protests to removing Russia from non-UN forums to more widely undermining its image and prestige abroad. And credit where it's due, they've tried. The mass cancellation of Russian athletes and cultural figures, as well as the bid to kick Russia out of the G20, are proof of that. Ultimately, though, the researchers decided that staging a coup in Russia would be a tough bet.
Affecting the political stability of a country by an external actor is difficult, and Russia is a more difficult country to influence than most.
So finally, the military. Pull out of nuclear arms treaties? Check. Increase the size and frequency of NATO exercises in Europe? Check. Increase US forces in Europe? Check. Deploy missile defense systems to Europe? Check. Deploy bombers within easy striking range of Russia? Check. Oh, and Ukraine? Check.
While NATO's requirement for unanimity makes it unlikely that Ukraine could gain membership in the foreseeable future, Washington's pushing this possibility could boost Ukrainian resolve while leading Russia to redouble its efforts to forestall such a development.
So, make public promises only to goad Russia? It seems even President Zelensky has realized his country was played here.
It is clear that Ukraine is not a member of NATO. We understand this. For years we heard about the apparently open door, but have already also heard that we will not enter there, and these are truths and must be acknowledged.
And while the report said a military approach risked an all-out war, it insisted the option be kept on the table.
Most of the options discussed are in some sense escalatory, and most would likely prompt some Russian counter-escalation. Thus, besides the specific risks associated with each option, there is additional risk attached to a generally intensified competition with a nuclear-armed adversary to consider. This means that every option must be deliberately planned and carefully calibrated to achieve the desired effect.
Almost all these prophecies came true. So you have to ask, is it coincidence? Did the RAND Corporation, which describes itself as non-partisan, have a crystal ball back in 2019? Maybe, but let's just see where RAND gets its cash. The Pentagon, the US Army, the US Air Force, and national security agencies like the CIA. In fact, around 75% of its funding comes from the US government. And you know who it counts among its clients? The UK government, EU agencies, and yes, NATO. Like I said, it could all be a coincidence. It could be that these groups just found each other and that their interests collided. But you have to admit, it's almost as if the RAND Corporation wrote a playbook for what's now unfolding day by day.
And generally speaking, when RAND publishes a study of this nature, it's generally because somebody in the U.S. government has expressed an interest in this kind of study. So I think, one, yes, you can trust the source, and two, you can understand that this information relates to a line of thinking that is prevalent within the U.S. government. When one takes a look at the reality of the U.S.-led sanctions against Russia today because of the special military operation in Ukraine, it is clear that while the Russian economy took a hit and was suffering, that it's recovering. And it's going to readjust to this new reality. While the U.S. economy and the European economies are suffering and may even suffer more because of the divorce between the West and Russia. So I think this is clearly an example where some academics thought that this might be a good idea, but reality has dictated a different outcome.